2 years after burying my beloved wife, I finally returned to the empty, cold mansion atop the misty mountain. The moment I saw her lavender garden blooming perfect and meticulously cared for, my heart tightened with a question: who is living here? Then I remembered my hidden security camera system. I opened the archive footage. What appeared before my eyes made my blood run cold. I'm glad you're here for this one. Before we dive in and drop a comment, what are you doing while you listen? Driving, working, cooking, or just taking a quiet moment? I read every single one. Quick note, certain details are fictionalized for storytelling, but the lesson at the heart of this story is what truly matters. The mansion had been empty for 2 years, but the lavender garden was in full bloom. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as my sedan climbed Route 211, winding through the Blue Ridge foothills in the October fog. 58 years old, and I still drove like an old man, careful, deliberate, the way you navigate life, after 30 years designing security systems for corporate clients who pay you to think 3 steps ahead of every threat. Except, I hadn't seen the real threat coming, not until Celeste was gone. The financial advisor had been calling for months. Sell the property, he said. 1.5 million sitting empty while you pay taxes and utilities on a ghost. He was right, of course. I hadn't been back since we buried her in May 2022. Couldn't. Every time I thought about driving up this mountain road, my chest tightened and my hands went numb. But the estate needed settling, papers needed signing, and maybe I was ready. The fog broke as the road curved, and there it was. The mansion Celeste fell in love with 30 years ago, perched on the hillside, like something out of a Gothic novel. Gray stone, tall windows, a slate roof that cost more to repair than most people's houses. She'd called it her fortress. Her escape from the city, from my obsessive work schedules, from the daughter who only called when she needed money. I slowed the car, squinting through the windshield. Something was wrong. The lavender garden, Celeste's pride. The rose she planted herself. That first summer, we bought the place stretched along the property line near the road. Purple blooms swayed in the morning breeze. The stems stood tall and green, healthy, vibrant. Lavender doesn't survive neglect. I pulled to the side of the road, my pulse hammering in my ears. 2 years, 2 years of empty rooms and locked doors, and a property management company I paid to check the pipes twice a season. No one was supposed to be maintaining anything, certainly not the garden. I killed the engine and stepped out into the cold October air, my breath fogged. The morning smelled like pine and damp earth, and faintly, impossibly lavender. The garden was 50 feet away, bordered by a low stone wall Celeste and I built together one weekend in 1995. I walked toward it, my shoes crunching on gravel, my heart doing something arrhythmic and painful. Up close, it was even more wrong. The soil was dark, damp, freshly watered. I knelt and pressed my palm against the earth between the plants. Wet. Not from rain, we hadn't had rain in a week, but from deliberate recent watering, the kind of care that required someone to visit regularly, with intention, with knowledge of what lavender needed to thrive. Who waters a dead woman's garden? I whispered to no one. The wooden gate stood 10 feet away, separating the garden from the long driveway that curved up to the mansion's entrance. I stared at it, my stomach turning over. The paint was fresh, forest green, the color Celeste had chosen decades ago and repainted every few years. The last time I'd seen this gate at her funeral, walking away from the house I couldn't bear to enter, the paint had been peeling, flaking. Celeste had asked me to repaint it that spring, the spring before she got sick, and I'd said I'd get to it. I never did. Now it gleamed. I stood and approached the gate slowly, as if it might vanish if I moved too fast. The hinges were new. Brass, not the rusted iron I remembered. Someone had replaced them, recently. How does a garden survive 2 years without its gardener? How does a gate get repainted when the owner hasn't set foot on the property? My hand found the latch. It opened smoothly without the squeak I remembered. I stepped through onto the driveway, and the mansion loomed larger now, close enough to see the windows. The curtains drawn shut the front door at the top of the stone steps. I'd left my keys in the car. No, wait! My hand went to my jacket pocket. The old keyring was still there, the one I'd carried for 30 years. Celeste's house key, slightly tarnished, the brass worn smooth from decades of use. I climbed the steps, my knees ached, my breath came short. At the top, I paused and looked back at the lavender garden below, purple and green against the gray morning, and thought about the last time I'd stood here. Celeste had been alive, laughing about something, Saskia, our daughter, had just left after another tense visit, another request for money to invest in her husband's business. Celeste had squeezed my hand and said, "She'll figure it out eventually. People do." She'd been wrong. I turned back to the door. Oak heavy with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head that Celeste found at an antique market in Charlottesville. I fit the key into the lock, expecting resistance rust, aged 2 years of disuse. The lock turned smoothly, as if someone had oiled it. The key turned, the door opened, and everything I thought I knew about the last 2 years collapsed. The scent hit me first, lavender concentrated and overwhelming, flooding out from the dark interior like a wave. Not the faint outdoor fragrance from the garden, but the deliberate indoor presence of cut stems and vases, dried bundles hanging from rafters, sachets tucked into corners. The smell of someone living, surrounded by Celeste's favorite flower. I stood frozen on the threshold, one hand on the door, the other still gripping the key. The house smelled like her, like she'd never left. But the scent wasn't faint or faded, it was fresh, deliberate, as if someone had cut the stems that morning and arranged them throughout the house. The house I thought had been abandoned, the house where no one should be living. I forced myself to step across the threshold. The hardwood floors gleamed under the morning light, polished, cared for, impossibly clean for a house abandoned 2 years. My shoes left faint prints on the surface. Someone had been maintaining these floors. Recently. The lavender scent was everywhere, hanging in the air, like Celeste herself had just walked through arranging fresh bouquets. I closed the door behind me, and the sound echoed through the foyer, too loud, too empty, except it wasn't empty at all. The living room stretched to my left. Celeste's leather sofa, the one she'd spent 3 weekends hunting for, at estate sales, sat against the wall. The leather looked soft, conditioned, not the cracked, dried surface I remembered from the funeral. I crossed the room and pressed my palm against it. Smooth, recently treated. My chest tightened. I moved through the house like a ghost haunting his own life, cataloging details that shouldn't exist. The kitchen counter, spotless, wiped down a dish towel folded neatly beside the sink. I opened the refrigerator. The light came on. The motor hummed. Inside, a carton of milk with an expiration date 3 days out. Eggs, fresh vegetables in the crisper. Leftover containers with handwritten labels. "The milk expires in 3 days," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "They were just here. They'll come back." My hands were shaking. I gripped the refrigerator handle until my knuckles went white, then forced myself to let go and keep moving. Celeste's rocking chair sat by the window overlooking the lavender garden. The cushion was different, cream-colored, embroidered with small blue flowers. Not the faded green one she'd used for 30 years. Someone replaced it," I said aloud. "Why would they replace it? One bis. Saoni sibi quat." I climbed the stairs to the second floor, each step creaking in the familiar pattern I'd memorized decades ago. The master bedroom door stood open. Inside, the bed was made with crisp white sheets that hadn't been there 2 years ago. Hospital corners, military precision, not Celeste's style. The guest room was next. I pushed the door open slowly as if something might leap out. The closet door hung ajar. Inside, women's clothing on hangers, expensive. Modern cuts, bold colors, not Celeste's muted earth tones. And beside them, men's business suits, pressed, recent dry cleaning tags still attached. My breath caught. I reached for one of the women's blazers, navy blue tailored designer label. I pulled it off the hanger and turned it over in my hands. The lining had a monogram I'd paid extra for last Christmas, SM. "I recognize that blazer," I said, my voice hollow. "I bought it, for Saskia, last Christmas." My daughter had been living in my house. Who takes over a grieving man's home and makes it theirs while he drowns 2 hours away in memories. I dropped the blazer and walked back into the hallway, my pulse hammering. The study. I needed the study. I needed to see everything. The second-floor study sat at the end of the hall, Celeste's workspace, where she'd managed the household accounts and planned her garden layouts. I pushed open the door. Her desk sat undisturbed the same way I'd left it, but the bookshelf against the west wall that was mine. I crossed to it and ran my fingers along the third shelf from the bottom, feeling for the hidden latch beneath. There. I pressed. The bookshelf swung inward with a whisper of well-oiled hinges, revealing the 8-by-8-foot room I'd built 15 years ago. 3 dark monitors mounted to the wall, a server tower humming quietly in the corner. My life's professional expertise packed into a surveillance system I'd installed to protect Celeste from threats I couldn't name, but always feared. I told Celeste this was excessive, I muttered, stepping into the small space. She laughed and said I was paranoid. Maybe I was right to be paranoid. I sat in the chair, still there, still functional, and reached for the power button on the center monitor. The screen flickered to life, displaying the login prompt I'd programmed a decade and a half ago. Password Celeste's birth date, May 3rd, 1964, 0503196 The system accepted it. The monitors bloomed with light, displaying a grid of camera feeds throughout the house. Living room, kitchen, master bedroom, garage, all still functional, all still recording to the backup drive that had been spinning silently for 2 years. 15 years, I breathed, still recording to the backup drive, still watching. The camera never lies. 30 years designing these systems taught me that. And the camera was about to show me something I couldn't unsee. I navigated to the archive footage menu. Yesterday evening, 8 p.m. timestamp. I selected the living room feed camera angle from behind the wall clock, high definition, perfect audio. I clicked play. The screen showed the empty living room in evening light. 8:03 p.m. Nothing. 8:04. Still nothing. 8:06 p.m. The front door opened. A woman entered carrying 2 grocery bags, moving with the ease of someone who'd done this 100 times. She kicked the door closed behind her, with her heel walked straight to the kitchen counter, visible in the frame's edge, and set the bags down. She turned toward the camera. My heart stopped. No, I whispered, not her. Anyone but her. Saskia Mercer, 32 years old. My only daughter, the child Celeste and I had raised in this house, stood in my living room, wearing the cashmere sweater I'd given her last Christmas. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked healthy, rested, comfortable. She began unpacking groceries, humming something I didn't recognize, a pop song maybe, something light and carefree. She moved through the kitchen like she owned it, putting away milk, eggs, vegetables, the same items I'd found in the refrigerator minutes ago. She paused, looked around the living room, and smiled. My daughter stood in my living room, unpacking groceries into my refrigerator, humming a song I didn't recognize. She looked comfortable, happy. At home in the house where her mother died, the house she'd claimed she couldn't bear to visit because the grief was too much. She'd lied. The question was, what else had she lied about? I rewound the footage 30 seconds and watched my daughter enter again, this time, looking for what I'd missed. The timestamp reset to 8:06 p.m. Saskia came through the front door, with her grocery bags moved to the kitchen, set them down. I let the recording play forward, watching every movement, every gesture, searching for something, anything that would make this make sense. 8:09 p.m. The front door opened again. A man entered carrying white paper bags with red Chinese characters printed on the side. He kicked the door shut behind him, with his heel, the same casual motion Saskia had used minutes earlier. The camera captured him in profile as he turned toward the kitchen. Corbin Mercer, 35 years old, my son-in-law, real estate investor, the man who'd married my daughter 4 years ago in a ceremony so expensive I'd had to liquidate stocks to pay for it. He moved through the living room like he owned it, because apparently he thought he did. He's wearing the watch I gave him for his birthday, I whispered to the empty surveillance room. The one he said he loved. On screen, Corbin set the takeout containers on the dining table, Celeste's antique oak table that she'd refinished by hand, one summer sanding and staining until her fingers bled. He tossed his blazer over the chair's back without care, then kicked off his shoes by the door. Saskia emerged from the kitchen, carrying 2 wine glasses and a bottle I recognized from the cellar, my cellar, a 2015 Bordeaux I'd been saving for an occasion that would never come. They moved around each other with the choreography of a couple who'd done this 100 times. He opened the takeout containers. She poured wine. He set out plates from the cabinet, knowing exactly which cabinet, exactly which shelf. She grabbed forks from the drawer without looking. They're eating dinner at our table, I said. At Celeste's table. Corbin said something I couldn't hear. The audio pickup was good, but not perfect across the distance. Saskia laughed. He leaned over and kissed her cheek. She swatted him playfully with a dish towel. They looked happy, comfortable, at home. This isn't a visit, I breathed. This is their home now. I fast-forwarded through dinner, 15 minutes of them, eating, talking, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear clearly. My hand trembled on the mouse. Every few seconds I had to remind myself to breathe. At 8:43 p.m., Corbin stood and retrieved his briefcase from where he'd left it by the door. He carried it to the dining table and opened it with both latches clicking audibly on the recording. He spread documents across the surface white pages with text I couldn't quite read at this resolution, but I recognized the formatting. Property deed templates. I'd seen enough of them when Celeste and I built our portfolio. I increased the volume and leaned closer to the monitor. Corbin's voice came through clearly now. When can we finally move on this? I'm tired of waiting for the old man to... Saskia cut him off. Patience. He'll let go when he's ready, or when he has no choice. My blood turned to ice. The rental properties alone are worth $500,000, Corbin said, tapping one of the documents with his finger. Plus this place. We're sitting on $2 million in assets while he mopes around his apartment, ignoring reality. He's grieving, Saskia said, but her tone was flat clinical. It takes time. How much longer do we play this game? As long as it takes. She said it so casually. Let go naturally or be helped to let go. My daughter was discussing my death like a business transaction. Corbin leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. I could push harder, speed things up. No, Saskia's voice sharpened. We do this carefully. Everything has to look natural. He signs over power of attorney for estate management, just temporary while he's overwhelmed with grief, and then we have control. Legal, clean. And if he doesn't sign... Saskia turned to face Corbin directly, and even through the camera's fixed angle, I could see the expression on her face. Cold. Strategic. Nothing like the daughter who used to climb into my lap when she had nightmares, who called me every Sunday during college, who cried on my shoulder at her wedding. He will, she said. I'm his only family now. He'll trust me. The footage continued, but I couldn't hear it anymore, over the roaring in my ears. I gripped the edge of the desk, my vision tunneling my breath, coming in short gasps. They weren't just living in my house. They were planning to take everything. And Saskia, my daughter, my only child, was leading it. I reached for the mouse to pause the recording, to give myself a moment to process, to think. Monitor 3 flashed. Motion alert driveway, camera. The display switched automatically to the live feed. Red timestamp in the corner, 10:43 a.m. Current time, not recorded. Happening now. A silver sedan rolled through the gate. Saskia's car. No, I whispered. Not now. I'm not ready. 30 years building security systems taught me to think 3 moves ahead, but I'd never planned for the moment I'd need to hide from my own daughter. The car pulled up the driveway, tires crunching on gravel, clearly audible through the outdoor camera's microphone. It stopped in front of the main entrance engine, cutting off. They'll see my car, I said aloud, my voice cracking. They'll know I'm here. My sedan was parked behind the east wing, not hidden, not concealed, sitting in plain view where anyone pulling up to the house would see it immediately. The camera system shows everything, I muttered, my hands shaking, including where I'm hiding. The car doors opened on the live feed. Saskia emerged, first phone pressed to her earmouth, moving as she spoke to someone I couldn't hear. Corbin followed, carrying 2 grocery bags in his arms. More supplies, more evidence they lived here. More proof this wasn't a visit. They were 40 feet from the front door, 40 feet from coming inside, 40 feet from discovering me trapped in a secret room in a house they thought was theirs. And my car was parked where they couldn't possibly miss it. Saskia stopped walking the moment she saw my car. On the monitor, I watched her freeze mid-step on the driveway, grocery bag still in Corbin's arms behind her. Her head turned toward the east wing, where my sedan sat parked in plain view. Her shoulders stiffened. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. 2 taps on the screen, quick practice like she'd done it 1,000 times before. She held the phone closer to her face, studying something intently. Her expression shifted, surprise melting into something colder. Calculating. I zoomed the camera feed, maxing out the digital magnification until pixels blurred, but I could still make out her phone screen. A map, blue dot in the center. Text label above it, Dad's phone. The dot sat squarely inside the mansion's floor plan outline. She installed tracking software, I whispered. On my phone. How long has she been watching me? My hand went to my pocket, felt the weight of the device I carried everywhere. The phone I'd used to call Celeste's hospice nurse 100 times. The phone I'd stared at for hours after the funeral, hoping for messages that would never come. The phone that had been with me. Every trip to the cemetery, I breathed. Every errand, every moment I thought I was alone. She'd been tracking me, watching my movements, knowing when I left my apartment, when I returned, when I stayed home for days drowning in grief. And today, when I'd finally come back to the mansion, she'd known that too. She's not surprised I'm here. She already knew. On screen, Saskia lowered her phone and turned to Corbin. Her mouth moved. I couldn't hear the audio at this distance with the outdoor microphone, but whatever she said made him nod and shift the groceries to one arm. They moved toward the front door with purpose. No hesitation, no confusion. They were coming for me. I killed the monitor backlights with 3 quick keystrokes. The screens went black. The secret room plunged into absolute darkness. Only the faint hum of the server tower remained a sound so familiar I barely registered it anymore. I pressed my back against the wall and waited. The front door slammed open downstairs. The sound carried through the old house's bones like a gunshot. Heavy footsteps on hardwood, multiple sets, moving fast. Thane, Corbin's voice boomed from the first floor, carrying up through the vents, false warmth coating every syllable. "We saw your car. We know you're here." Silence. Then Saskia's heels clicking on the floor. Methodical. Room to room. Kitchen, living room, dining room. Each one checked with the efficiency of someone executing a plan. "Dad, please." Her voice was closer now, probably near the stairs. "We just want to talk." Liar. The word burned in my throat, but I swallowed it, pressed my palm over my mouth to keep from making any sound. I'd spent 30 years protecting assets data executives. I had designed systems to catch corporate espionage, theft, sabotage. But I'd never imagined hiding in the dark from my own daughter. Footsteps on the stairs, slow, heavy. Corbin climbing up one step at a time. Each footfall vibrated through the old house's frame, transmitted through the walls into the floor beneath my feet. I felt every step like a countdown. He reached the second-floor landing, paused. I heard him breathing loud, deliberate breaths of someone trying to listen for other sounds. "Check every room," Corbin called down to Saskia. "He can't have gone far." Doors opening, closing, master bedroom, guest room, bathroom. The sounds grew closer. My heart hammered so hard I was certain they'd hear it through the wall. The study door creaked open. I held my breath. Corbin's footsteps entered the room 6 feet away, maybe less separated only by the bookshelf and the heavy-duty latch mechanism I had precision-engineered to look like a seamless part of the wall. I heard him moving around, opening the closet, rustling papers on Celeste's desk, dragging the desk chair across the floor. Then silence. Long, terrible silence that stretched until my lungs burned from holding my breath. Through the bookshelf's hairline gap where the hidden door met the frame, I saw shadow movement. Corbin's silhouette. He was standing still, studying something. "This wall looks wrong." His voice was quiet now, thoughtful. "Too shallow? Saskia, I think there's something behind this." Footsteps in the hallway. Saskia joining him in the study. I heard her enter, heard her shoes on the hardwood right outside my hiding place. "What do you mean?" Her voice, so close. 6 feet and one false wall between us. "The proportions are off." Corbin moved closer to the bookshelf. His shadow fell across the gap. "This room should extend another 8 feet based on the exterior dimensions. But it stops here. Dead space." The bookshelf that protected me was about to become the thing that trapped me. "A dad designed security systems for 30 years, Saskia said slowly. "If he hid something, it would be clever. Help me move this bookshelf." "Number." I heard both of them shift position, heard hands gripping wood. The bookshelf creaked under pressure, not the hidden latch, but the frame itself being tested. They were going to move it by force. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness enough to make out the room's outline. Server tower against the left wall, 3 monitors mounted above, desk and chair, and in the ceiling invisible unless you knew where to look. The ventilation duct, 2 feet square, leading to the roof access I'd installed as an emergency exit back when Celeste had laughed at my paranoia. Maybe I wasn't paranoid enough. "On 3, Corbin said. 1. I looked up at the ceiling. The vent was 8 feet above my head. I'd need to stand on the desk, move silently, pry open the grate without sound. 2. I had seconds, maybe 5, maybe 10. 3. The bookshelf groaned as they pulled. Old wood protesting. The hidden door mechanism wasn't designed to withstand this kind of force. It was meant to slide open with a gentle press, not hold against 2 people trying to tear it down. I heard both sets of hands grip the bookshelf frame. The old wood creaked under their combined pressure. In 5 seconds, maybe 10, the shelf would slide forward, and the hidden door would be exposed. And I would be standing there in the darkness with nowhere left to run. I climbed onto the desk chair as the bookshelf scraped across hardwood below. The metal duct was narrower than I remembered, and the sound of the bookshelf scraping across hardwood followed me through the darkness. My shoulders caught on the sides. I pulled myself forward with my forearms dragging my body through the cold steel of the narrow air shaft, dragging my body forward through the dark. 15 years ago, I built this escape route for intruders. I gasped into the dark. Never thought I'd be the one using it. Behind me, muffled by metal and insulation, Corbin's voice, triumphant. There, the panel. He went up. I crawled faster. The shaft sloped upward at a 30-degree angle for 8 feet, then leveled off. My hands were bleeding. I could feel the wetness, the sting of torn skin against rough metal edges. But I kept moving, kept pushing forward until I saw it, a square of gray light ahead. The roof access hatch. I shoved it open and pulled myself out onto the sloped roof. Storm clouds pressed down from above, dark and heavy, and pregnant with rain. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees since morning. Wind whipped across the slate tiles, carrying the smell of ozone and coming thunder. Below me, a 12-foot drop to overgrown bushes behind the mansion. 12 feet, I whispered. I'm 58. This is going to hurt. No other option. Through the open hatch behind me, I heard footsteps in the camera room. Corbin's voice. He's on the roof. Saskia circled around back. Bevor des buis. I positioned myself at the roof's edge legs, dangling over hands gripping the gutter that was probably too old to hold my weight. The bushes below looked soft, but I knew better blackberry brambles with thorns, wild roses, whatever had grown untended for 2 years. I heard the study window slide open, Corbin climbing out. I pushed off. The thunder crack came the instant my feet left the roof, a deafening boom that split the sky and shook the air itself. My body dropped through space arms, windmilling, stomach lurching. The thunder drowned everything, my grunt of impact, the snapping of branches, the sharp crack of something in my left ankle giving way wrong. I hit the bushes hard. Thorns raked my face and hands. Pain exploded through my ankle like someone had driven a spike through bone. But I bit down on my tongue to keep from screaming tasted blood and stayed conscious, stayed quiet. The thunder came exactly when I needed it. I breathed into the wet leaves, almost like Celeste was watching. Above me on the roof, Corbin's silhouette against the gray sky. He was scanning the yard flashlight beam cutting through the dimming light. But the thunder had masked which direction I'd fallen. He turned left away from me, shouting something toward the front of the house. I didn't wait. I rolled out of the bushes, biting back the scream as my ankle protested. Rain started fat drops that hit like cold bullets. I limped toward the tree line 50 yards away. Each step sent fire up my leg, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The pine forest swallowed me. Darkness beneath the canopy, the smell of wet earth and decay and resin. I dropped to my knees behind a massive fallen trunk, scooped handfuls of wet leaves and pine needles over myself, buried my body, covered my face, left only a small gap to see through. 58 years old, injured ankle, soaking wet, hiding from my daughter in a forest behind the house I built with my own hands. This wasn't how I imagined growing old. The rain intensified. Through the trees I saw lights, flashlights sweeping from the mansion. 2 beams, Saskia and Corbin searching. Corbin's voice carried through the storm. Thane, you can't hide forever. This is our property now. The beams moved closer, methodical, covering the ground in overlapping patterns. Professional, like they'd done this before. I pressed myself deeper into the leaves, ignoring the pain, ignoring everything except the need to disappear. The flashlight beam swept past my position, continued forward, swept back, paused. Footsteps approaching, slow, deliberate. Corbin's voice much closer now. I know you're out here. The flashlight beam played across the fallen trunk I hid behind, across the leaves. My heart hammered so hard, I was certain it would shake the debris covering me. A boot landed on a branch 6 inches from my hand. I held my breath, suppressed the pain screaming from my ankle, became stone, became earth, became nothing. Corbin stood there for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. I could hear him breathing, could smell cigarette smoke clinging to his jacket. Then a crackle of radio or phone. He's not in the immediate perimeter. Check the tracking app. Saskia's voice distant and tinny through his device. I'm looking at it now. The boot lifted. The flashlight beam moved on. Corbin's footsteps continued deeper into the forest away from me, the sound gradually swallowed by rain and wind. I waited, counted to 600, 10 minutes, every muscle locked, every nerve firing distress signals. But I didn't move until the flashlight beams were distant flickers through the trees, until the voices faded to nothing. Then I let myself breathe. I'd escaped the house, but I was still in their trap. I shifted position, slowly testing my ankle, swollen, possibly fractured. But I could put weight on it if I had to. I'd have to. My jacket was soaked through heavy with rain. I felt the weight of it pulling on my shoulders, felt something in the pocket press against my ribs. My phone. Ah, the phone, I whispered. How could I forget the phone? I pulled it out with shaking hands. The screen was dark but functional, protected by its waterproof case, still broadcasting, still updating. She's watching me right now, I said to the empty forest. Watching the blue dot hide in the forest. Corbin's words echoed in my memory. Check the tracking app. They're not searching randomly. They know exactly where I am. I stared at the device in my palm, the phone I'd carried for years, the phone that had become my leash, my collar, my tracking anklet. Every call I'd made, every errand, every moment I'd thought I was alone. Saskia had been watching, knowing, planning. The phone screen glowed faintly through my jacket fabric, illuminating the rain on the leaves around me. A compass, a beacon. Every 30 seconds it told Saskia exactly where I was hiding, and if I turned it off, she'd know I'd discovered the tracking. Either way, she was hunting me. I pulled the phone from my pocket and opened the settings with shaking rain-soaked fingers. The screen glowed against my palm, illuminating the water droplets running down my wrists. I navigated past the home screen, past the apps I used daily, down to the system settings where the truth lived in background processes and data usage logs. There, an app I'd never installed, Family Locator. I tapped it. Installation date, February 14th, 2024. 8 months ago. 8 months, I whispered. She's been watching me for 8 months. February. 2 months before Celeste's heart gave out in April. 2 months before the hospital, the monitor's the last conversation, where she'd gripped my hand and asked if I'd checked the estate documents recently. I'd thought she was rambling from the morphine. I scrolled through the app's permissions. GPS, always. Location services, always. Background app refresh enabled. Battery optimization disabled to ensure constant tracking. The data usage told the rest of the story. Uploading location every 30 seconds. 8 months of constant surveillance, every trip to the grocery store, every visit to Celeste's grave, every moment I'd thought I was alone in my grief. This wasn't installed recently, I said to the empty forest. This was planned before Celeste died. 30 years designing security systems had taught me to recognize professional surveillance when I saw it. This wasn't a concerned daughter checking on an aging father. This was intelligence gathering. This was tracking an asset. This was preparation for something that required knowing every movement, every pattern, every vulnerability. I placed the phone face up on a flat rock, raised my boot. I'm 58 years old destroying my only communication device in a forest in the rain, I said. But at least I'm free. I brought my heel down. Once, the screen spiderwebbed. The glow dimmed but persisted. The tracking signal probably still transmitting my location to Saskia's phone. Twice, glass shards scattered across the rock. The screen went dark, but the device might still be functional, still broadcasting from some buried chip. 3 times. Plastic cracked, metal bent, internal components crunched. Silence. 3 strikes. That's all it took to sever the digital leash my daughter had put on me. But it also severed my connection to everything else, every emergency contact, every lifeline, every way back to the world I used to know. I left the phone's remains on the rock and limped toward Route 211. The descent took hours. My ankles screamed with every step. The rain never stopped, steady cold soaking through my jacket until the fabric clung to my skin like a second layer. No phone, no wallet. I'd left it in my car locked behind the mansion's gate. No way to call for help. Car headlights occasionally swept around curves above me. Each time I stepped into the trees and waited until the sound faded. Paranoia? Maybe. Or maybe Saskia had friends searching. Maybe she'd already called the police, reported me missing, told them I was confused, dangerous to myself. Around what my watch said was midnight. Though it felt like days had passed, I stopped to rest against a guardrail and thought about Celeste's last coherent words. She'd gripped my hand tubes running from her arms, monitors beeping their countdown. "I don't need you to protect me," she'd said. "I need you to be with me." I'd thought she was asking me to stay at the hospital, to not leave her bedside, but she'd meant something else entirely. "Celeste, you tried to tell me something," I said to the darkness. "I wasn't listening. I'm listening now." She'd needed me present, aware, not lost in my work, my systems, my obsessive planning for threats that hadn't materialized yet. She'd needed me to see what was happening in front of me, to see that our daughter had already started planning, already installed the tracking, already positioned herself to take everything the moment Celeste was gone. And I'd been too buried in grief and guilt to notice. Every step down this mountain takes me further from my home and closer to becoming a stranger in my own life, I muttered, pushing off from the guardrail. The pain in my ankle had evolved from sharp to dull, to a constant throb that never quite faded. Each step was a negotiation between forward progress and collapse. But I kept walking. 5 hours, 12 miles. 58 years old with a blown ankle. The things we do to survive our children. Around a curve where the road leveled slightly, I saw it aglow through the rain. Neon sign mostly obscured by fog, but bright enough to read as I got closer. Millie's Diner open 24 hours. The parking lot held 2 vehicles. A semi-truck cab, dark driver probably sleeping. An older pickup Rust, visible even in the dim light. Light spilled from the diner's windows onto wet pavement, warm and yellow, and impossibly inviting. I stopped at the lot's edge and took stock. I was soaking wet, limping badly, covered in mud and pine needles and dried blood from where thorns had raked my face. No phone, no ID, no wallet, no credible story that wouldn't sound insane. A man running from his own daughter. A diner, warmth, a phone, help, everything I need, everything that could trap me. When does a refuge become a trap? When your own daughter has turned the entire system against you. Do I look like a man running for his life? I asked the rain. Because that's exactly what I am. If Saskia had already called the police, if she'd already reported me missing, confused suffering from dementia or grief-induced psychosis, then walking into that diner in my current state would confirm every lie she'd told. They'd take one look at me and call it in. Confused elderly man wandering possibly dangerous to himself. And the police would take me directly to my next of kin, to Saskia. If she's already called the police, if she's already told them I'm confused, walking in there could be the end. But if I didn't go in, I had nowhere else to go. No destination, no plan, just more miles of dark road and a body that was already failing. I had 2 choices: walk past the diner and continue down the mountain in the rain with a destroyed ankle, and no destination, or walk through that door and gamble that Saskia hasn't already poisoned the well. Either way, I was making a decision I couldn't take back, and I had about 30 seconds to choose. I chose the door. The bell above the diner entrance chimed as I stepped inside, tracking mud and rain across linoleum that had probably been mopped an hour ago. Heat hit me first, dry, artificial, wonderful. Then the smell: coffee, bacon, grease, something, sweet baking in the back. 3 people occupied the space. A truck driver hunched at the counter, working through a plate of eggs. An elderly couple in the corner booth sharing a piece of pie. And behind the register, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a practical bun. Ruth Callahan. I read her name tag as she looked up, sized me up in one glance. Soaking wet, limping, muddy, bleeding from scratches on my face. She didn't ask questions, didn't call for anyone, just reached under the counter and pulled out a clean towel. "Towels on the house," she said, sliding it across. "Phone's by the kitchen. Coffee?" I took the towel, pressed it against my face. The fabric came away spotted with blood and dirt. "Yes, please, and the phone. I need the phone." She pointed to a landline mounted on the wall near the kitchen pass-through. The cord was long enough to stretch to an empty booth. I limped to it, picked up the receiver, and dialed the only number I'd memorized in 40 years. My hands shook as I pressed each button. The line rang once, twice. "Hello." Boyd's voice, alert despite the hour. He'd always been a light sleeper. "Boyd, it's me. I need $3,000. Tonight." No pause, no hesitation. "Western Union or wire transfer, I can have it there in 30 minutes. That was it. That was the entire conversation about the money. No questions about why, no demands for explanation, just logistics. Western Union, Route 211. There's a convenience store attached to Millie's Diner. I'll call you back with the confirmation code. Stay where you are." The line went dead. 40 years of friendship measured in a 30-second phone call. No questions, no hesitation, just how much and where. That's the kind of trust that can't be bought, inherited, or stolen. It can only be built 1 decade at a time. Ruth appeared with coffee, black. She set it down without asking how I took it. You running from something or towards something? She asked quietly. Both. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Booth's yours as long as you need it. Bathroom's in the back if you want to clean up. I wrapped my hands around the mug. The warmth hurt. My fingers had gone numb during the walk down the mountain, and now the blood was returning with pins and needles. I welcomed the pain. It meant I was still alive, still here, still fighting. 23 minutes later, the landline rang. Ruth answered, listened, then held it out to me. For you. Boyd's voice came through crisp and clear. Confirmation code is 8847. Money's waiting at the Western Union counter, 3,000 even. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. His voice dropped. Turn on local news, Channel 7, now. The line went dead again. I looked at Ruth. Do you have a TV? She pointed to a small wall-mounted set above the counter, picked up a remote and switched it on. The screen flickered to life, showing a late-night news broadcast. Local affiliate, low-budget graphics, anchor reading from a teleprompter. Be missing person alert out of Blue Ridge County tonight, the anchor was saying. My driver's license photo appeared on screen. Authorities are searching for 58-year-old Thane Garrison, last seen. The image changed, not my photo anymore. Saskia, standing outside the mansion, microphone in her face, eyes red from crying. Dad hasn't been himself since Mom died, she said, voice breaking perfectly. He gets confused, forgets where he is. Sometimes he doesn't recognize me. We're just so worried about him. If anyone sees him, please call police immediately. He's vulnerable. He might hurt himself without meaning to. The camera held on her face. Tears tracked down her cheeks. Real tears. Or real enough for television. The truck driver at the counter glanced up at the TV, then over at me, back to his eggs, said nothing. Ruth stood behind the counter, arms crossed, watching the screen. When the segment ended and the anchor moved to sports, she turned to me. That your daughter? Yes. That she lying? Yes. Ruth studied me for a long moment. Then, figured, coffee's on me. She switched off the TV. The truck driver stood, dropped cash on the counter, and walked out without looking at me again. The elderly couple finished their pie and left. The bell chimed twice. Then it was just me and Ruth in the empty diner, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and rain drumming on the roof. People with amnesia don't remember 40-year-old phone numbers, Ruth said quietly. And they don't walk 12 miles down a mountain in the rain just to ask a friend for help. My daughter turned me into a public victim, but she forgot I spent 30 years thinking like an attacker. Hunting requires knowing where your prey will run. And now I knew exactly what trap she'd set. I need to collect that money, I said. Ruth nodded toward the convenience store door. Through there, counters on the left. The Western Union transfer took 5 minutes. $3,000 in cash, split into 20s and hundreds. I bought a disposable phone and prepaid minutes. $280, I had $2,720 left. When I returned to the diner, Ruth refilled my coffee without asking. You need a place to stay? She said, I got a room above the diner, $20 a night, cash, no questions. I wanted to say yes, wanted to collapse into whatever bed she was offering and sleep for a week, but staying in one place was a luxury I couldn't afford. I need to keep moving, I said, but thank you for not calling the police. 40 years, Ruth said. That's a friendship worth protecting. Drive safe or walk safe or whatever you're doing out there. I sat in that diner booth with a disposable phone, $3,000, and a clarity I hadn't felt since before Celeste died. Saskia thought she was isolating me, destroying my credibility, making me helpless. She was wrong. She just showed me exactly what weapons she was using, and in doing so, she taught me how to fight back. The first step was finding a place to think. The motel room smelled like bleach and old cigarettes, but I barely noticed because I couldn't stop thinking about May 2022. The bed was lumpy. The heating unit rattled. Rain drummed against the window in a rhythm that should have been soothing, but wasn't. I lay on my back staring at the water-stained ceiling and replayed Celeste's final month. 3 years. She'd lived 3 years after the heart disease diagnosis. Stable. Managed. The cardiologist had been pleased with her response to medication. She took her pills every morning, monitored her blood pressure, attended checkups. We'd settled into a routine, careful but hopeful. Then May arrived. Celeste was stable for 3 years, I whispered to the empty room. Then suddenly in May, everything fell apart. The decline had been rapid, terrifying. Within 2 weeks, she could barely walk from the bedroom to the bathroom without gasping for air. Her skin turned gray. The cardiologist ordered more tests, adjusted medications, talked about hospice care. I'd been devastated. Saskia had been devoted. She'd moved into the mansion, took over all the caregiving, every medication, every meal, every visitor. She'd insisted on being the one to administer the pills, claiming she had a system, a schedule that it was too complicated for me to manage while I was overwhelmed with grief. I'd been grateful that Saskia was so devoted, I said. Every medication, every meal, every visitor. She controlled everything. She'd limited visitors. Too stressful for Mom, she'd said. Doctor's orders to keep her calm and quiet. When Boyd tried to visit Saskia, turned him away at the door. When Celeste's sister called from Oregon wanting to fly out, Saskia told her not to come. Yet Mom wasn't ready it would upset her, maybe next week. Next week never came. Celeste died on May 28th. Heart failure, expected the doctor said. Natural progression of the disease. I signed the death certificate without question. I was grateful, I whispered. God help me, I was grateful my daughter was killing my wife. They say hindsight is 20/20, but sometimes hindsight is a curse that shows you every warning sign you missed, every moment you could have saved someone, every time you chose trust over suspicion. And now, all I had left was the weight of being too late. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., I gave up trying. The convenience store attached to the motel opened at 7. I bought cheap reading glasses, a baseball cap, a different jacket than the one I'd been wearing, changed in the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror. 58 years old, unshaven, exhausted, but not confused, not senile, not the man Saskia had described on television. The pharmacy where Celeste got her prescriptions filled was 3 miles down Route 211, small independent place, Valley View Pharmacy. Same pharmacist for 20 years. Celeste had liked them, trusted them. I walked in at 9 a.m. The interior was bright and clean, white tiles, fluorescent lights, shelves stocked with vitamins and cold medicine. A young woman stood behind the counter organizing pill bottles, dark hair pulled into a professional ponytail. Name tag, Paloma Sinclair, Farm D. She glanced up as the door chimed. Our eyes met. I saw recognition flash across her face, then confusion, then something that might have been fear. Mr. Garrison, she said quietly, I saw you on TV. Your daughter said, I know what she said. She's lying, and I can prove it, but I need your help. Paloma looked at the door behind me, the parking lot, back to me, making calculations. If you're really confused, she said slowly, you wouldn't know to come here asking for this. Come to the back. She led me through a door marked Employees Only into a small office, closed the door. The space held a desk filing cabinets, a computer terminal. I shouldn't be doing this, Paloma said. HIPAA violations, privacy laws, but I remember your wife. She was kind, always asked about my school. Pharmacy school is hard, and she'd check in every time, ask if I was sleeping enough, eating right. Paloma sat at the computer. If what your daughter said on TV is true, you'd be at home resting, not here looking for evidence. Thank you. Paloma typed quickly. What do you need to see? My wife's prescription records from May 2022, before she died. The keyboard clicked. Screen light reflected off Paloma's face. She scrolled down a list of entries, dated records, medication names I half recognized. Her expression shifted, confusion hardening into deep concern as she leaned closer to the monitor. She double-checked the log, scrolling back up and down, her frown deepening with every line. What is it? I asked. Paloma didn't answer immediately. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen, tracking a fatal anomaly. Someone had altered the dosage. Not a routine refill, but a deliberate modification. Mr. Garrison, she said slowly, her voice dropping. Did you know your wife's prescription was replaced with something else that month? The question hit like a physical blow. Replaced how? Paloma turned the monitor toward me. The screen showed a list of medications with dates, dosages, prescribing physicians. She pointed to an entry dated May 3rd, 2022. I nodded. I recognized the name. And here. Paloma pointed to another entry, 2 lines down, same date. May 3rd. The carvedilol was discontinued, replaced with... She paused, looked at me like she was deciding whether to continue. With what? I demanded. The pharmacist's question hung in the air like smoke, changed. Celeste's prescription had been changed in May 2022, during her final month when only Saskia had controlled her care, and I hadn't known. I hadn't even asked. The medication that was supposed to keep her alive had been altered, and I'd been too lost in grief to notice. She turned the screen toward me, and I saw my wife's name next to a date I would never forget, May 14th, 2022. "Here," Paloma said, pointing to a line on the screen. "May 14th, Celeste Garrison, prescription change authorization." The entry showed Celeste's regular heart medication, Digox, and the drug she'd taken faithfully for 3 years, the same drug that kept her heart beating in proper rhythm. And beside it, in red text, discontinued. Below that, a new entry Cardio Herbal Premium supplement. Not a medication, not FDA regulated, a supplement. $400 per month, Paloma said quietly. Not covered by insurance, paid in cash. Oikish, every month. Someone had to come pick it up and pay. But that's not... She scrolled to another document. "This is what concerns me." A scanned authorization form filled the screen. Official pharmacy letterhead, legal language about power of attorney and medication changes, and at the bottom, a signature line. My name, my signature, except it wasn't. The handwriting was shaky uneven. The T in Thane slanted wrong. The loop on the G in Garrison was too tight. Someone had tried to copy my signature, but hadn't quite managed the confident, precise engineer's script I'd developed over 30 years of technical drawings. "This authorization has your signature dated May 12th, Paloma said. "Do you remember signing it?" I stared at the date. May 12th, 2022. "May 12th I was in the hospital," I said slowly. "Pneumonia. I couldn't even hold a pen that week. I'd been admitted May 10th. Fever of 103. Lungs full of fluid. They'd kept me on IV antibiotics and heavy sedatives. I didn't leave until May 15th, and even then I could barely walk to the car without assistance. I never signed anything," I said. "I couldn't have. I was too sick." Paloma's expression darkened. "Then someone forged your signature to cancel your wife's heart medication. $400 a month for herbal supplements that did nothing, while her heart medication sat discontinued. It wasn't murder by action. It was murder by absence. And that made it so much worse a death by slow calculated neglect, dressed up as holistic care." "Who picked up the supplements?" I asked. "You said someone came every month." "It's same woman, May, June, July. After July, she stopped coming. Because Celeste died the May 28th, there was no need for the charade after that." "Do you remember what she looked like?" Paloma nodded. Early 30s, dark hair usually pulled back, well-dressed. She was memorable because she always paid in exact bills, like she'd counted it beforehand. $400. Never $420 or $380. Always exact. "Did she ever mention a name, introduce herself?" "Und, en veces van die Weinidesint." "No. We don't require ID for supplement pickups, just the authorization code. She'd give me the code, I'd hand over the supplements, she'd count out the cash. Very efficient. Very..." Paloma paused. "Cold, actually. Most people chat, ask questions. She just wanted the transaction done." She opened a drawer in the desk, started pulling out items. Unclaimed reading glasses, a scarf, hair clips. "She wore jewelry," Paloma continued. "Expensive stuff, rings, earrings. But the bracelet was distinctive, wide metal cuff with custom engraving." Paloma pulled something from the bottom of the drawer. Silver, tarnished from months of neglect. "The clasp broke one day in June," she said. "Right after she paid. It fell off while she was counting bills. She picked it up, said she'd come back for a repair. Never did." She held the bracelet up to the light. I remember thinking it was beautiful, custom engraved, just the letter S. The world tilted. S. She wore it. My daughter wore the bracelet to the funeral. While I wept over the casket, she had evidence of what she'd done wrapped around her wrist like a trophy. Paloma set the bracelet on the desk between us. The engraved letter caught the fluorescent light. A single damning S. "I've seen this before," I said. My voice sounded distant, hollow. "Where?" "On my daughter's wrist, at my wife's funeral." I picked up the bracelet. Heavy, cold, solid silver, probably. The kind of thing that cost hundreds of dollars. The kind of thing Saskia would buy without thinking twice because money had never been a concern for her. Money from her trust fund. Money from the assets she was planning to steal. The engraving was professional. Clean lines, custom work, just the letter S in an elegant script. I turned it over in my hands, and the memory crashed through me with brutal clarity. June 17th, 2022. Celeste's funeral, Gray, Virginia, sky threatening rain, but holding off just long enough for the service. Cemetery on a hillside. 30 people gathered around a casket I'd chosen because Celeste had never wanted to discuss her own death. I'd stood at the graveside unable to speak, unable to function. Boyd had read the eulogy I couldn't manage. Saskia had stood beside me, her arm around my shoulders, crying beautifully. And on her wrist this bracelet, catching the overcast light, silver against her black funeral dress. I'd noticed it because it seemed too bright for the occasion, too flashy. But I'd said nothing because what did jewelry matter when we were burying my wife? She'd worn it to her mother's funeral, the bracelet she'd lost while buying the supplements that replaced the medication that could have kept Celeste alive. The bracelet sat in my palm, solid, undeniable, engraved with my daughter's initial. Physical proof that Saskia had picked up those useless supplements every month while her mother's heart slowly failed. I had enough evidence now to go to the police. But walking into a station when my daughter had already told the world I was confused and dangerous, that was suicide. I needed more than evidence. I needed a plan. Paloma let me photograph everything: the prescription records, the forged signature, the authorization form. She put the bracelet in a small evidence bag pharmacy, lost and found policy, she said, in case anyone ever came back for it. I laid everything on the motel table like pieces of a case file, prescription records, photos of the forged signature, and Saskia's bracelet still in the pharmacy's evidence bag. Evidence. Real, tangible, undeniable evidence. I picked up the disposable phone and stared at it. 911, 3 numbers. That's all it would take. Or the non-emergency line. Walk into a police station, lay out the case, show them what I'd found. I could call them, I said to the empty room. Tell them everything. Show them the evidence. I started dialing. Got as far as the area code. Stopped. Because I could see exactly how it would play out. I'd walk into the station, soaking wet, limping. The man from the television broadcast, the confused father whose daughter was desperately searching for him. I'd try to explain about the tracking software, the secret room, the security footage, the forged prescriptions. And they'd listen, politely, while one officer quietly made a phone call. And they'd call Saskia, I whispered. Ma'am, your father is here. He seems confused. Could you come down? She'd arrive within the hour, tears streaming, so relieved, so worried. She'd hug me, thank the officers for calling, explain gently that Dad hasn't been himself since Mom died. The dementia is getting worse. He gets these ideas, these paranoid theories. The forged signature Dad's handwriting has been deteriorating. Easy to verify, here are other samples from recent months showing the decline. The bracelet she lost that months ago has no idea how it ended up at a pharmacy. The tracking app. Of course she installed it. Dad kept getting lost, wandering, forgetting where he was. It was for his safety. The system protects people like her, I said. Successful, articulate, crying on camera, not muddy old men with conspiracy theories. 30 years designing security systems taught me that the strongest locks in the world mean nothing if someone with authority has the key. Saskia had the key, her tears, her story, her public narrative. I needed to change the lock entirely. I set the phone down and picked up the bracelet instead. Heavy, cold even through the plastic bag. The engraved S caught the afternoon light coming through the motel curtains. Celeste's voice echoed in my memory, not from the funeral or the hospital, from earlier, from one of her last coherent days before the symptoms accelerated. We'd been sitting in the mansion's lavender garden, May 2022. She'd been weak but alert. Saskia had gone into town for groceries, one of the rare moments we'd been alone. Celeste had gripped my hand, looked at me with those eyes that had seen through 30 years of my walls and defenses. She tried to tell me, I whispered, closing my eyes. Be with me, she said, not protect me. Be with me. I'd thought she meant stay close. Don't leave her side, but that wasn't it at all. Be with me, be present, be aware. Don't retreat into your engineering mind, your security protocols, your obsessive planning for abstract threats. See what's happening right in front of you. I was too busy designing security systems to notice she needed security from our own daughter. If I'd been with her, truly with her, I would have noticed the medications changing, the symptoms accelerating too quickly, Saskia's too perfect devotion, the way visitors were turned away, the isolation. But I'd been protecting her the only way I knew how, by not being present, by not seeing, and now she was gone. Celeste, I'm with you now, I said to the empty room. And I'm going to do this your way, not through lawyers and courts, through truth, public, undeniable. I picked up the phone again. This time, I didn't dial 911. I dialed Boyd. He answered on the second ring. Tell me you're somewhere safe. Safe enough. I need to ask you something that's going to sound insane. Most things you've done in the past 48 hours sound insane. Try me. Do you remember how to set up a live stream one that can't be taken down easily? One that broadcasts to multiple platforms simultaneously? Long pause. I heard Boyd breathing, thinking. Or a live stream, he finally said. What are you planning? Something that can't be buried in paperwork or delayed by lawyers. Another pause, longer this time. Are you asking if I can help you do something crazy? Boyd asked slowly. I'm asking if you will. What's more powerful than a courtroom? A courtroom has 12 jurors. A live stream has thousands. The silence stretched. I could almost hear Boyd doing calculations, weighing risks, considering consequences. Then give me 2 hours. 2 hours. I need to research platforms' redundancy protocols, ways to keep it running, even if someone tries to shut it down. And I need to figure out how to make it impossible to trace back to the source until it's too late to stop it. Can you do that? 30 years ago, no. But the internet has evolved. Multi-streaming services, cloud hosting. If I set it up right, it'll broadcast to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, everything simultaneously. Kill one feed, and 5 others keep running. By the time they're all down, thousands of people will have recorded it and reposted it. It's Boyd. 2 hours, he repeated. Then call me back and tell me what you need. But I want you to think carefully about this. Once you start a live stream like that, you can't take it back. Whatever happens on camera is permanent. That's the point. Then I'll have it ready. The line went dead. I sat on the motel bed staring at the evidence spread across the table. 2 hours. That's how long Boyd said he needed to set up a multi-platform live stream that couldn't be easily shut down. 2 hours before I started planning not a legal case, but a trap. Because if Saskia wanted to make me look like a confused old man, I was going to give her exactly what she expected, right up until the moment I turned the tables. Chapter 4 was about to begin, and this time I was writing the script. The 2 hours gave me time to plan the first strike. The recording had been in my cloud storage for 4 years, uploaded automatically from Celeste's phone on her last birthday, May 3rd, 2020. 18 seconds of audio captured when she pocket-dialed me while working in the lavender garden. I'd kept it after she died, listened to it on the bad nights when sleep wouldn't come and grief felt like drowning. Her voice alive and happy, talking to her plants the way she always did. Now it would become something else entirely. I downloaded the file to the disposable phone. The audio was clear. Garden sounds in the background, birds whine through trees, the distant hum of a lawnmower from a neighbor's property, and Celeste's voice warm and slightly amused. Darling, wherever you are, I hope you're listening. These lavender plants are finally blooming properly. I wish you could see them. She'd been talking to me without knowing I was there. A message sent into the void that had somehow been captured and preserved. I checked the time. 10:58 p.m. Late enough that Saskia would be alone in the mansion. Late enough that darkness and isolation would amplify every fear. I dialed her cell phone number, the one I'd called 1,000 times when she was growing up. The one that used to mean comfort and connection. Now it meant war. 3 rings, 4. Then her voice cautious and guarded. Hey, hello, who is this? I said nothing, just held the phone close to the motel speaker and pressed play. Celeste's voice filled the line. Darling, wherever you are, I hope you're listening. These lavender plants are finally blooming properly. I wish you could see them. Silence on the other end, I could hear Saskia breathing, quick, shallow. The recording played again. I'd set it to loop. Darling, wherever you are, I hope you're listening. Who? Saskia's voice cracked. Who is this? I hung up, sat in the dark motel room holding the phone, imagining Saskia standing in the mansion she'd stolen, hearing her dead mother's voice come through the phone like a ghost demanding answers, wondering who had that recording, wondering what else they had. Sleep well, Saskia, I whispered to the empty room. If you can. 30 years designing security systems taught me that the most effective alarm isn't the loudest. It's the one that makes you question whether you're already caught. That recording wasn't evidence. It was doubt. And doubt is a slow poison. I waited until morning, Wednesday 8 a.m., time for the second strike. I used the other burner phone, the one Saskia hadn't heard yet, and composed a text message to Corbin's cell number. I'd memorized it years ago, when we'd coordinated surprise parties and family events. The message needed to be specific enough to be believable, but vague enough to create paranoia. Your wife met with Donovan Realty yesterday, listed the mansion for private sale, $2.1 million. Your name isn't on the paperwork. Thought you should know. A friend? I hit send. Watched the message status change from sending to delivered to read. Corbin had opened it within 30 seconds. I'd watched him for 4 years, studied him the way you study a threat. He was paranoid, greedy, hot-tempered, the kind of man who saw betrayal everywhere because he was always calculating how to betray first. His conspiracy with Saskia required trust. I'd just introduced poison into their alliance. Greed plus suspicion equals chaos, I muttered, setting the phone down. Let them tear each other apart. I imagined Corbin reading that text, calling Saskia immediately, demanding to know if she'd met with a realtor, her denials, his voice rising, the accusation in every word. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Are you cutting me out? How long have you been planning this? Their alliance would fracture, maybe not break completely, not yet, but crack, and cracks spread. But this isn't enough, I said to myself, staring at both burner phones on the table. Words and ghosts won't force a confession. I need something they can hold, something that proves I know everything. Ghosts can haunt, but only the living can testify. The voice recording had been terrifying. I knew that from Saskia's reaction. Her dead mother's voice coming through the phone in the middle of the night would keep her awake, make her paranoid, make her wonder who was watching. The text to Corbin would plant suspicion, make him question Saskia, make him wonder if she was planning to take everything and leave him with nothing. But neither one forced them into the open. Neither one made them confess, because they were just shadows, just suggestions, just psychological warfare. Yet I can scare them, I said. I can confuse them, but I can't make them confess with phone calls and texts. I stood and paced the small motel room, 5 steps to the window, 5 steps back to the bathroom door. The space felt smaller every hour. What did I need? Something physical, something tangible, something they could hold in their hands and know, absolutely know, that I'd been inside their conspiracy, that I'd seen their plans, that I had evidence. They need to see something that proves I've been in their files, their plans, their secrets. A document, a contract, a piece of paper that looks so real, so official, so impossible to fake that they'd panic. And in that panic, they'd do what guilty people always do. Try to cover their tracks. Try to explain. Try to defend themselves. And on camera, that defense would sound exactly like a confession. I need to fabricate evidence that looks so real, they'll incriminate themselves trying to protect against it. I sat back down at the table and pulled out the disposable phone, opened the browser, started searching. Real estate contracts, property transfer documents, power of attorney forms. 30 years of creating technical documents had taught me exactly what official paperwork looked like. The fonts, the margins, the legal language, the formatting. I could create something convincing, something that would make Corbin believe Saskia was cutting him out, something that would make them both realize I knew everything. I needed something physical, something they could hold in their hands and know with absolute certainty that I'd infiltrated their plan. A document, a contract, something so convincing they'd panic trying to cover it up. And in that panic, they'd confess everything. I just needed to create it, and I knew exactly what it would be. The public library opened at 10 a.m. I was waiting at the door. The library computer logged me in as guest_0047 anonymous and temporary, exactly what I needed to create something that would destroy my daughter's conspiracy. The terminal sat in the back corner, positioned so the librarian at the front desk couldn't see the screen. Perfect. I pulled up a search engine and started with the basics: Virginia Real Estate Deposit Contract templates. 3 clicks later, I had a blank PDF from the Virginia Association of Realtors. Legitimate, professional, the exact format used for millions of property transactions across the state. I downloaded it, opened it in the library's word processing software, stared at the empty fields waiting to be filled. 30 years, I whispered. 30 years of reading contracts, reviewing blueprints, catching forgeries and insurance claims. Now, I'm the forger. But I was good at it. That was the thing. 30 years of creating technical specifications, change orders, engineering documents for corporate security installations had taught me exactly what official paperwork looked like. The fonts, the spacing, the legal language structure, the subtle formatting choices that separated real documents from amateur fakes. I filled in the property address first, 1847 Blue Ridge Mountain Road, Virginia. The mansion, real, verifiable. Seller name Saskia Mercer, just her. No mention of Corbin, no co-owner designation. Solo seller. Deposit amount $150,000. Realistic for a property worth over $2 million. The kind of number that would make Corbin's eyes go wide. Closing date, November 15th, 2024. 3 weeks away. Soon enough to create urgency. I added a brokerage letterhead at the top, Blue Ridge Realty Partners. I'd found a real Virginia firm with a similar name, borrowed their color scheme and logo style changed just enough to avoid direct copying, but maintain authenticity. Every detail mattered. Font size for the body, text 11 point, Times New Roman. Standard legal document formatting. Margins exactly 1 inch on all sides. Page numbers in the footer. Legal disclaimers in 8-point text at the bottom. Corbin is paranoid and greedy, I muttered, adjusting the alignment on a signature line. Show him proof his wife is cutting him out, and he'll tear the conspiracy apart himself. I'd spent 3 decades protecting buildings' data assets from external threats. I'd never imagined using those skills to forge evidence, to manipulate, to trap. But then, I'd never imagined my daughter would murder my wife. We adapt to the wars we're given. The final touch, I added subtle compression artifacts. Made the PDF look like it had been scanned from paper, rather than created digitally. Slight pixelation around text edges, faint paper texture in the background, the kind of imperfections that made documents look real. The best lies are 95% truth, I said to the empty terminal. This contract uses the real mansion address, real deposit amounts, real legal language. Only the signatures are fiction. I saved the file as Mercer_property_deposit_agreement_rev2.pdf. Professional. Boring. Exactly what a realtor would name a contract revision. Now for delivery. I opened a temporary email service, the kind that creates addresses that self-destruct after a few hours. Created an account k.morrison at blueridgerealty-va.com. Close enough to legitimate firm names to pass a quick inspection. Professional enough to look real. Corbin's email address had been in Celeste's pharmacy records. Paloma had given me a copy of the whole file. He was listed as emergency contact. I'd memorized it. I composed the email with the same precision I'd used for the contract. Subject line: revised deposit agreement, Mercer Property. Professional. Boring. Exactly what a real estate agent would send. Body text: Mr. Mercer, please review the attached revised deposit agreement for the Blue Ridge property. There was some confusion regarding authorized signatories that has now been clarified by the seller. Please review at your earliest convenience and contact our office with any questions. Best regards, Kimberly Morrison, Senior Agent, Blue Ridge Realty Partners. Short, professional, the kind of email that gets opened immediately because it sounds important but not alarming. I attached the forged PDF. Hovered the cursor over the send button. 3 seconds. That's how long I waited, thinking about what would happen once this email left the library's IP address and landed in Corbin's inbox. He'd open it, probably within an hour. He was obsessive about email, always checking his phone. He'd download the attachment, see the contract, see Saskia's name as sole seller, see the deposit amount he knew nothing about, see the closing date 3 weeks away. And he'd spiral. The email address will bounce in a few hours when the temp service expires, I said quietly. But by then, Corbin will have downloaded the attachment and spiraled. I clicked send. The email whooshed into the digital void, a sound effect the email client played, fake but satisfying. Send! And now we wait for the paranoia to metastasize. The email was out there now. A digital bomb with Corbin's name on the address line and a timer set for the moment he clicked open attachment. I spent the next 10 minutes covering my trail, cleared browser history, deleted cache, removed cookies, emptied the downloads folder, logged out of the temporary email account, though it would self-destruct in 3 hours anyway, closed every window, every tab, every trace. Egg delete, clear, wipe. Leave no trace that guest underscore 0047 was ever here. The library system would wipe the session completely when I logged out. But I was thorough. Decades of security work had made me paranoid about digital footprints. You never knew what could be recovered, what could be traced. I sat back in the hard plastic chair and stared at the blank screen. Somewhere, probably at the mansion, probably in the home office with the view of the lavender garden, Corbin would open that email. Maybe in an hour, maybe less. He'd see that contract. See his wife's betrayal spelled out in official legal language. By tonight, Corbin will confront Saskia. She'll deny everything. He won't believe her. Their alliance was already cracked. The anonymous text yesterday had planted the first seed of doubt. The forged contract was a sledgehammer. And when they're too busy destroying each other, I'll move to the final phase. I logged out. The screen returned to the library welcome page. Guest underscore 0047 vanished like he'd never existed. I walked out of that library knowing I'd just lit a fuse I couldn't extinguish. Within hours, Corbin would see that contract and believe his wife was betraying him. The paranoia I'd planted with anonymous texts would bloom into full warfare. And while they fought each other, I'd be preparing the stage for their final performance, one that thousands would witness live. By the time I returned to the motel, I had 24 hours to prepare for what came next. The blueprints were 15 years old, but I'd designed the system myself. I knew every camera angle, every speaker placement, every hidden component that could still function on independent power. I spread the hand-drawn security diagrams across the motel table, yellowed paper, pencil sketches I'd made in 2009 when Celeste and I first moved into the mansion, before Saskia's wedding, before the heart disease diagnosis, before everything fell apart. Living room 2 cameras, ceiling mounted 180-degree coverage. Independent battery backup, good for 72 hours. Kitchen 1 camera above the refrigerator, angled to catch the dining table. Master bedroom camera hidden in wall clock audio pickup, sensitive enough to capture whispers. Second floor hallway ceiling, speakers remotely controllable via the main system. I'd installed them for whole house audio. Celeste liked to play music while she gardened speakers, carrying Mozart through open windows. Ventilation system smoke device for fire drills. Celeste had insisted after reading about mansion fires in historic homes. Theatrical fog, harmless but disorienting, remotely triggered. Every component I installed to keep Celeste safe is still there, I whispered. Independent power, remote access, waiting. I'd built that security system with love, every camera positioned, to give Celeste peace of mind, every sensor calibrated to protect what we'd built together. Now, those same tools would expose the daughter who destroyed her. Technology doesn't judge, it just records truth. My phone rang. Boyd. Corbin just passed my house, he said without preamble. 70 miles per hour, maybe more. He looked like he wanted to kill someone. I checked my watch. 6 a.m. Thursday morning. The forged contract had worked faster than expected. He's going to confront Saskia, I said. I need to see how this plays out. Can you track them? I'm already in my truck. I'll text you updates. The line went dead. I grabbed my keys and drove to the hilltop observation point 3 miles from the mansion, a scenic overlook where tourists stopped to photograph the Blue Ridge Mountains. This early, it was empty. I parked with a clear view of Route 211's approach to the mansion. The long driveway was visible from here, winding through lavender rows up to the house. 7:15 a.m., light rain started falling. Corbin's black SUV roared into view, taking the curves too fast. He didn't turn into the driveway. He stopped in the middle of the road, blocking it. 30 seconds later, Saskia's silver sedan came up from the opposite direction. She had to brake hard to avoid hitting him. Both vehicles stopped. Doors opened. They got out. Even from this distance, maybe 300 yards uphill, their body language screamed confrontation. Corbin waved his phone. The screen caught the light. He was showing her something. The contract. Had to be. Saskia's hands went up. Defensive posture, shaking her head. Corbin pointed at the phone, at the mansion, at her. She backed toward her car. Their voices carried faintly uphill through the rain. I couldn't make out words, just tone, accusation, denial, escalation. Even from here I can see the rage, I muttered. The fake contract destroyed whatever trust held them together. Saskia tried to reach for Corbin's phone. He jerked it away, stepped back, pointed at her with his other hand. She's trying to explain. He's not listening. Paranoia plus greed equals combustion. Before I show you what that confrontation revealed, are you still with me? Comment A if you think their alliance will hold, or B if you think it shatters, and tell me why in one sentence. Because what I witnessed next changed everything. Quick note, the next part includes some fictionalized details to convey the emotional core of what happened. Corbin threw his phone. It hit the wet asphalt and skidded. He got back in his SUV, slammed the door hard enough I heard it echo up the hillside. The engine roared. He fishtailed around Saskia's sedan, nearly clipping her bumper, and accelerated toward the mansion. Saskia stood in the rain alone, staring after him. Then she pulled out her own phone, started dialing, pacing, talking to someone I couldn't hear. Corbin's SUV disappeared around the bend. "He's going to the mansion," I said. "And if I don't get there first, I lose control of what happens next." The alliance was shattered. Corbin thought Saskia was cutting him out. He was racing to the mansion to do what confront her there. Search for evidence, secure his claim to the property. I didn't know, but I needed to be inside before he arrived. I turned the ignition, pulled onto Route 211, accelerated. The rain intensified. My windshield wipers struggled to keep up. 12 miles of mountain road between this observation point and the mansion. Corbin had maybe a 5-minute head start. I had to close that gap. My phone buzzed. Text from Boyd. Saskia just called police, reported Corbin as dangerous, potentially armed. Dispatch ETA 30 minutes to mansion. The hunter had become the prey, had become the hunter again. And now we were all racing toward the same house where it started. 30 minutes. The police were 30 minutes out. I had to get inside, activate the security systems, set up the live stream Boyd had configured, position myself in the hidden camera room. Before Corbin arrived, before Saskia arrived, before the police arrived, and this became a legal nightmare with lawyers and Miranda rights, and my daughter crying on camera about her confused, dangerous father. 30 minutes to turn my home into a confession chamber. 20 minutes if I drove fast enough. Then I have 30 minutes to make them both confess before the police arrive, and this becomes a legal nightmare, I said to the empty car. My accelerator hit the floor. Rain hammered the windshield. Corbin was ahead of me, racing toward the mansion in fury. Saskia would follow once she realized what was happening. The police were 30 minutes out, and I had one chance, one narrow window to get inside, activate the live stream, and turn my home into a confession chamber before everything collapsed into sirens and lawyers and my daughter's tears on camera saying I was the confused one. The final act was beginning, and I was still writing the script in real time. I reached the mansion 8 minutes ahead of Corbin. The spare key was still there, wedged under the third brick from the left corner of the back gate, right where I'd hidden it 15 years ago, when Celeste kept forgetting hers. I slipped through the back entrance. Rain soaked through my jacket. My ankle still ached from the roof jump, but adrenaline kept me moving. The mansion was dark, empty. Corbin hadn't arrived yet. I entered through the kitchen door. The lock turned smoothly. Someone had been maintaining it. Saskia, probably. I didn't turn on lights. Muscle memory guided me through hallways. Living room, dining room, staircase, second floor, study. I pressed the hidden latch beneath the third shelf. The bookshelf swung inward. The secret room welcomed me back. 3 monitors mounted on the wall, server tower humming, independent battery backup with a green LED. I flipped the main power switch. The monitors flickered to life. Camera feeds appeared. Living room, empty furniture covered in dust sheets. Kitchen recently used. Master bedroom made bed fresh linens. They'd been living here like it was already theirs. 15 years, I whispered, checking the battery indicator. Battery backup still at 87%. Camera still recording. Everything I built to protect her is about to expose them. I pulled out the tablet Boyd had prepared. His email with live stream instructions was already open. Create broadcast accounts on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, all with randomized names, temporary email addresses. Link to multi-streaming service that would broadcast simultaneously to all platforms. Test the connection, green light, audio clear, video, all cameras functional. Boyd's instruction stream goes live when I click this button. No way to shut it down remotely. Once it starts, it's out there. I stared at the activation button. 1 click. That's all it would take. I'm 58 years old, sitting in a hidden room in my own house, about to broadcast my daughter's confession to strangers. This is what justice looks like now. The security system I'd built with Celeste's safety in mind was about to become the courtroom where her killers would be judged. Not by 12 jurors in a closed room, but by thousands watching in real time. Justice had evolved. I was just keeping up. Before activating the stream, I needed to confirm one more thing. I opened the banking app on my tablet, logged in, navigated to Accounts Overview. There it was. The transfer I'd made 3 weeks ago, right after Boyd first called about the financial advisor. Right when I'd started to suspect. Rental property portfolio, $3 million total value, transferred to irrevocable trust, Celeste's Haven Foundation. 3 trustees required for any financial transactions, my attorney Celeste's sister, from Oregon Father Michael, from our parish. All 3 signatures needed to touch a single dollar. The mansion itself was still in my name, but the deed couldn't be transferred without all 3 trustee approvals. Legal safeguards I'd put in place the same week I'd discovered the tracking software. $3 million in rental properties transferred 23 days ago. They never knew. Saskia and Corbin had been plotting for months, maybe since before Celeste died, forging signatures, installing tracking software, poisoning my wife, all to inherit wealth they thought was unprotected waiting to be taken. The mansion is just bricks and wood. The real wealth, Celeste's legacy, is protected where they can never touch it. Even if they somehow got control of the house, even if their lawyers declared me incompetent and seized guardianship, the money was gone, safe, locked away in a structure designed to fund the charity forever. They thought they were stealing an empire. I let them fight over an empty fortress while I moved the treasure. They'd plotted for months, maybe years. I'd protected everything that mattered in 3 weeks. Sometimes experience beats youth and strategic thinking beats greed. Monitor 3 flickered. Motion sensor. I leaned forward, watching the outdoor camera feed from the front gate. Headlights, piercing through gray morning rain, moving up the long driveway between rows of lavender. Black SUV, Corbin's vehicle. I recognized the license plate. The SUV parked aggressively near the front entrance. The driver's door opened. Corbin emerged, soaking immediately in the rain. He was holding his phone, probably still had that forged contract open. His face was visible on camera. High-definition feeds I'd installed to catch burglars were now catching something much more valuable. Rage, confusion, betrayal, all mixed together in an expression that would have been almost pitiable if I didn't know what he'd done to Celeste. He stood in the rain, staring at the mansion. There he is, right on schedule, angry, paranoid, ready to tear the mansion apart, looking for proof Saskia betrayed him. My hand hovered over the live stream activation button. Not yet. I needed both of them. Corbin alone would just be a man breaking into a house. Saskia alone would cry and play victim. Together, fighting, accusing, desperate, they'd expose everything. The live stream button is right here. 1 click and thousands are watching. But I need Saskia too. I need them both. Corbin moved toward the front door, tried the handle, locked. He pulled a key from his pocket, of course he had one. He'd been living here. He unlocked the door, stepped inside. Monitor 1 showed him entering the foyer, standing in the darkness, looking around like he expected someone to jump out. Come inside, Corbin. Walk into the trap. And when Saskia arrives, we'll all have a conversation you'll never forget. Corbin stood in the rain, staring at the mansion like it held all his answers. In a way, it did, just not the answers he expected. My daughter would arrive soon, drawn by the same suspicion and anger I'd carefully planted. And when they were both inside, when they started tearing each other apart, looking for the truth, I would give them what they wanted. I would show them exactly what I knew, and the world would be watching. Corbin waited in the dark foyer for 12 minutes before Saskia arrived. I cut the main power 30 seconds before her car pulled into the driveway, plunging the mansion into darkness that would make every sound, every shadow, every carefully placed terror more effective. Through the outdoor camera running on independent battery like everything else, I watched her silver sedan park beside Corbin's SUV. She got out slowly, hesitant. The rain had intensified to a steady downpour. Corbin emerged from the front door, standing on the covered porch. Even from the camera angle, I could see his posture, aggressive, confrontational. He gestured toward the house. Saskia shook her head. He grabbed her arm. They argued. No audio at this distance, but the body language was clear. Accusation, denial, more accusation. Finally, Corbin pulled her toward the entrance. She stumbled, caught herself, followed. They entered the darkened foyer together, phone flashlights cutting through the blackness. Monitor 1 showed them clearly now. High-definition feed from the camera hidden in the ceiling molding. Corbin swept his light across the foyer, the stairs, the hallway leading to the kitchen. Thane, his voice boomed through the empty house, picked up perfectly by the audio sensors. We know you're here. Your car is a imbi one bospit azizis salsbiris. I pressed the button. Chopin Nocturne in E-flat major. Opus 9. Number 2 filled the mansion through ceiling speakers. Crystal clear. Perfect fidelity. The piece Celeste had played on our piano every Friday evening for 30 years. Corbin stopped mid-sentence. Saskia's flashlight dropped. The beam spun across the floor, illuminating dust motes suspended in darkness. That's... Her voice was barely a whisper, but the audio pickup caught it. That's Mom's song, the one she played every Friday. How is that playing? Corbin recovered first. It's a recording. Someone's messing with us. Keep moving. But he didn't move. Neither did she. They stood frozen in the foyer while Chopin filled the darkness around them. For 30 years, every Friday evening, Celeste played that piece while I read the paper. It was the sound of home, of peace, of everything good in my life. Now, it was the sound of judgment. Music doesn't forget. And neither do I. Corbin started toward the stairs. The speakers are in the ceiling, second floor. I can shut this off. I waited until he reached the third step. Then I activated the ventilation override. The system had been designed for whole-house air circulation. Celeste had insisted on it for her allergies. Now it carried something else through the HVAC ducts. Lavender essential oil, preserved from Celeste's own garden. I'd collected it the summer before she died, distilled it myself, stored it in sealed containers. The concentration I'd loaded into the system dispenser was intense, far stronger than any natural scent. It flooded through every room within seconds. Corbin reached the landing and stopped, his head turned, nostrils flaring. Saskia made a sound, not quite a scream, more like the noise someone makes when all the air leaves their body at once. It smells like her, she whispered, her voice cracked. Exactly like her, like she's here, like she knows what we did. She backed against the wall, her legs gave out. She slid down to sitting position on the foyer, floor hands covering her face. Corbin turned on the landing flashlight beam, finding her. It's ventilation, he said sharply. He planted this. Get up, Saskia. We need to find what he has on us. She didn't move, just sat there, shoulders shaking, the Chopin playing around her lavender scent thick in the air. She's watching, Saskia said. Mom is watching. I can feel her. I leaned closer to the monitor, studying my daughter's face through the hidden camera. Tears streaked through dust on her cheeks. Her mouth moved, but no more words came out. My daughter was having a nervous breakdown in the hallway where she took her first steps, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Corbin descended the stairs quickly. His footsteps echoed through the house, competing with Chopin. He grabbed Saskia's arm, hauled her upright despite her shaking. Listen to me, he said, his face close to hers. The camera caught every word. He's hiding. That means he has something. Evidence. Documents. Something he thinks can hurt us. Saskia nodded weakly, still crying, still shaking. The safe, Corbin continued. Master bedroom, behind the headboard. That's where old men hide things. We find it, we open it, we destroy whatever's inside. What if he really has proof? Saskia's voice was small, childlike. What if there's evidence, and then we destroy it before anyone else sees it? Corbin's voice was cold, certain. Now move. He pulled her toward the hallway leading to the master bedroom. She stumbled, but followed, obedient even in terror. They moved deeper into the mansion, Chopin still playing from ceiling speakers, lavender scent, following them like a ghost. My hand hovered over the live stream activation button on the tablet. Not yet. Wait for the safe. Wait for them to break through the wall. Wait for them to open it and find what I'd left inside. Wait for their faces when they realized what they'd walked into. They disappeared from Monitor 1's view entering the hallway. Monitor 4 picked them up, master bedroom camera hidden in the wall clock above Celeste's dresser. Corbin swept his flashlight across the room. The bed, the windows, the headboard. He said. Behind the headboard. That's where it'll be. He moved toward the bed, pulling Saskia with him. They were heading toward the master bedroom, toward the safe they thought held my evidence. They didn't know the safe was empty, that its only contents were a tablet showing their faces on a live stream that hadn't started yet. They didn't know that the real trap wasn't what I'd hidden. It was what I was about to reveal. And in about 90 seconds, they'd walk right into it. I watched on Monitor 4 as he pulled the headboard away from the wall, tossed decorative pillows aside, ran his hands along the plaster surface, tapping, listening. looking for hollow spaces. He found one. The hammer came from somewhere, maybe his car, maybe he'd grabbed it from the garage when I wasn't watching. It didn't matter. What mattered was the fury in each swing, the desperation. Plaster chunks fell to the hardwood floor. White dust billowed. The wall opened like a wound. Saskia stood in the doorway, still pale from the Chopin and lavender assault, watching her husband destroy the bedroom where her mother had slept, where her mother had died, the room I couldn't bear to enter after the funeral. "It's here," Corbin said between swings. "Has to be here. This is where he'd hide evidence." Another swing, more plaster falling. "What if it's not?" Saskia's voice was small. "What if he already took everything to the police?" "Then we're finished." Corbin didn't stop hammering. "But if it's here, we burn it. Every document, every recording, every—" Metal glinted through the broken wall. Safe door, brushed steel, digital keypad. Corbin dropped the hammer, stepped closer, wiped dust from the keypad with his sleeve. "But what's the code?" Saskia asked. Corbin tried the mansion address, 1847. Red light, failed. He tried Saskia's birthday, 0318, red light. Their wedding anniversary, 0712, red light. Random combinations now, desperate guesses, each failed attempt, making his shoulders tighter, his breathing harder. Every failed code attempt was music to me. Not Chopin this time, the percussion of desperation. The rhythm of people who'd planned for months, discovering their victim had planned better. "Damn it!" Corbin slammed his palm against the wall. Saskia moved closer, stared at the keypad like it held answers. "Try," she paused. "Try Mom's birthday." Corbin looked at her. "Why would he use her birthday?" "Just try it." May 3rd, 0503. The safe clicked. The door swung open. Corbin reached inside, immediately hands searching, then stopped, pulled back. The safe was empty, completely empty, except a tablet, screen glowing, propped against the back wall. Not a document, not a video file, not evidence they could destroy. A live feed. The screen showed multiple faces in tiny squares along the side. Chat scrolling. Viewer count in the corner climbing 2,847, 2,903, 3,156. And in the center frame, my face, Liv, looking directly at the camera, directly at them. "Hello, Saskia," I said through the tablet speakers, my voice calm and measured. "Hello, Corbin. I've been waiting for you." Corbin grabbed the tablet, stared at the screen. His face went white. His voice cracked. "We're on camera, right now. This is live." In the small window at the bottom of the tablet screen, he could see himself and Saskia, camera feed from inside the bedroom, real time, broadcasting. He hurled the tablet at the wall. It shattered, screen going dark, plastic fragments scattering across the floor. But my voice continued, through the ceiling, speakers, calm, unhurried. "You can break the tablet, but you can't break the ceiling camera, and you can't stop the 5,000 people watching you right now." Saskia's head snapped up, eyes scanning the ceiling, looking for the camera. YouTube. I continued through the speakers. Facebook, 3 backup platforms, multi-stream service. Even if you shut down one feed, 4 others keep broadcasting. Say hello to your audience. The broken tablet screen was still partially working, cracked but glowing. The chat was visible, scrolling fast. Who are these people? Why are they destroying that house? Is this real? Someone call the police. Viewer count 5,234. Saskia found the camera. Small lens embedded in the smoke detector housing. She'd walked past it 1,000 times growing up. Never noticed. Why would she? It was just part of the ceiling. "How many people?" she whispered. "How many are watching?" 8,000, I said. Growing every second. The algorithm loves drama. And this daughter breaking into father's house, destroying walls, searching desperately for something to burn. This is very dramatic. Corbin grabbed Saskia's arm, pulled her toward the door. "Don't say anything," he hissed. "Not one word. He can't prove anything without us confessing." But Saskia wasn't moving. She stood frozen, staring at that tiny camera lens. "They've been watching for 6 minutes," I said. "Watched you enter the house. Heard the Chopin, Yes Mom's song, the one she played every Friday for 30 years. Smelled the lavender yes from her garden, the one you maintained so carefully after she died. Watched you break through the wall like thieves. And now they're waiting to hear why you're here." The chat kept scrolling. "This is insane. Are they related to him? Why would a daughter do this? Viewer count 8,847. Why you're looking for evidence in your father's safe? I continued. Why you're so desperate to destroy something? Why you're here at all? Corbin pulled Saskia harder. She stumbled, caught herself on the dresser. Her hand came away covered in white plaster dust. Saskia looked at Corbin, at the broken wall, at the shattered tablet, at the camera. What do we do? She whispered. We leave, Corbin said. Right now. Before I what? My voice cut through the speaker. Before I tell them about May 2022, about the forged signature, about the prescription changes, about what you did to Celeste. Et de bon de bidi bon de debis. Saskia's legs gave out. She sat on the bed. The same bed where her mother had slept, where her mother had died. They were staring at the lens trapped in their own guilt. Before they could run, I pressed the button labeled Ventilation Override and watched the bedroom camera feed turn hazy. From the secret camera room, I had complete control, the smoke device I'd installed 15 years ago. Celeste's fire drill system, she'd called it, activated with a quiet hiss through the ventilation ducts. Theatrical fog, harmless. But in a sealed bedroom with no windows, it would look like the house was burning, feel like the walls were closing in. The smoke wouldn't hurt them, just disorient, panic, make them think they were running out of time. 15,000 viewers became 20,000 in 30 seconds. The algorithm loved chaos. On monitor, 4 white smoke poured from the ceiling vents, thick, fast, filling the master bedroom like water flooding a sinking ship. Saskia saw it first. She screamed, "Fire, there's fire." Corbin spun toward the vents. The smoke billowed around them, already obscuring the broken wall, the shattered tablet, the camera lens. "It's not fire," Corbin said, but his voice was rising. "There's no heat, no flames. We need to get out." Saskia ran to the door, grabbed the handle, pulled, locked. She pulled harder. The door didn't move. "Break it," she screamed. Corbin broke the door. He threw his shoulder against it. Once, twice. The door held. I'd reinforced it from the outside before they arrived. Steel plate behind decorative wood. It would take a battering ram to break through. The smoke was waist high now, rising. They couldn't see the cameras anymore, couldn't see anything except each other and the white haze swallowing the room. "Chemical attack," Corbin gasped. He's trying to kill us," Saskia's voice broke. Just like we... She stopped, realized what she'd almost said. 25,000 viewers now. I thought about stopping it then, thought about opening the door remotely, letting them escape before they said too much. But Celeste's face, the way it looked in the hospice, twisted with morphine and betrayal, kept my finger off that button. The smoke was chest high. They were both coughing now, not from toxicity, but from panic, from hyperventilation, from the claustrophobic terror of walls closing in. "This was your idea," Saskia shouted suddenly. "All of this. You said we just needed to wait. You said it would be natural." "Das stinkt sind, Danor." "My idea," Corbin's voice cracked. "You're the one who changed everything after your mother's diagnosis. You're the one who said she needed to be handled I never said that. You said the money couldn't wait. You said if we let her linger for years, the estate would be drained by medical bills." Saskia backed against the wall, hands covering her mouth against smoke that wasn't actually toxic. "You forged the signature. You found the pharmacist. You made the plan. I executed your plan." Corbin moved toward her through the smoke. "You wanted your mother gone so the inheritance would flow. I just made it happen." No, you're lying." "Am I?" Corbin's voice was venomous now. "Who installed the tracking app on your father's phone? Who suggested the dementia story? Who called the TV station? That was all you, Saskia. You orchestrated everything. I was just the hand that signed the papers." 30,000 viewers. The chat was exploding. I couldn't read individual messages anymore, just a blur of capital letters and exclamation points scrolling faster than human eyes could follow. "I didn't want her dead," Saskia sobbed. I needed the money, the house, everything she had. But I didn't want her to die like that, slowly, confused, asking why I wouldn't give her the real medication. She stopped, hand over mouth, eyes wide. The smell of lavender from the broken wall mixed with the theatrical smoke, and for a moment I was back in the hospital room where Celeste died, the same panic in my chest, the same feeling of walls closing in. But this time, I was the one controlling the smoke. She knew, Saskia whispered. In the end, she knew what we'd done. She looked at me, and she knew. Corbin slumped against the opposite wall. We're finished. If he's recording this... He's not just recording, Saskia said flatly. He's broadcasting. That tablet, the camera, thousands of people watching us die. We're not dying. This isn't... Corbin coughed. This isn't toxic. It's just smoke, fog. He's messing with our heads. The smoke began to clear. I'd programmed the ventilation system to reverse after 3 minutes. Fresh air flowing in, now pushing the theatrical fog toward the vents out of the room. Slowly, visibility returned. Corbin and Saskia could see each other again. See the broken wall, the shattered tablet. See the camera lens in the ceiling, smoke detector, blinking red. Recording, broadcasting. Everything, Saskia breathed. He heard everything. Then sirens, faint at first, then louder, growing, coming closer. Not one siren, multiple. Police, maybe ambulance, maybe fire trucks responding to reports of smoke. Corbin tried the door again, threw himself against it, screamed. That help, we're trapped. Someone help. Saskia slid down the wall to sitting position, knees pulled to chest, rocking slightly. They heard us, she whispered. Everyone heard us. We confessed, on camera, to thousands of people. The sirens were close now, 2 blocks, maybe less. 35,000 viewers. I checked the tablet in my hands, the chat, the viewer count, the live stream platform statistics. YouTube had flagged the stream as trending. Facebook was pushing it to news feeds. Twitter had it trending in 3 states. And someone, one of those 35,000 viewers, had called the police. I hadn't planned that. Hadn't called them myself. I'd been so focused on capturing the confession, on making them expose themselves, that I'd forgotten the audience wasn't passive. They were active, participating, making decisions. Someone had decided to call 911. And now police were coming. The viewer count hit 35,000. The sirens were 2 blocks away, maybe less. And in my tablet's reflection, I saw what the bedroom camera saw. Corbin and Saskia backs against opposite walls, staring at each other with the horror of people who had just confessed to murder in front of an audience they couldn't see. I hadn't called the police. Someone else had decided how this ended. I shut off the live stream and sat in the darkness of the secret camera room, listening to the sirens turn from distant wails into sharp, immediate screams outside the estate gates. On monitor, 3 police cars flooded the driveway. 4 vehicles, no 5. Blue lights strobing across the lavender garden, turning everything into a pulsing nightmare. Officers emerged, weapons drawn. Standard approach for a potential hostage situation. Someone had probably reported people trapped, smoke in a building, screams for help. They didn't know what they were walking into. Through the foyer camera, I watched them breach the front door. Professional, efficient. One officer stayed back to coordinate. The others moved inside, calling out warnings, clearing rooms. One man led the entry, older, graying hair, civilian clothes under a police windbreaker. Detective, probably. He moved like someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Detective Graham Whitfield. I'd learn his name later from the news reports. He climbed the stairs toward the master bedroom. Officers flanked him. They reached the reinforced door I'd locked. Police. If anyone's inside, step back from the door. Battering ram. 3 hits. The door splintered inward. Saskia and Corbin were sitting on the floor backs against opposite walls, exactly where I'd last seen them. They didn't resist, didn't run. Just sat there covered in plaster dust and the residue of theatrical smoke. Whitfield stepped into the room, looked around, at the broken wall, the shattered tablet, the smoke detector with its hidden camera lens. He looked directly at the camera, nodded once. He knew. Saskia Mercer Corbin. Mercer. Whitfield said, his voice carrying clearly through the audio feed. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. Anything you say has already been said to 35,000 people, but we'll read you your rights anyway. Saskia whispered something. I turned up the audio gain. It wasn't... The internet already voted, Whitfield said, almost gently. Now a jury will. Officers helped them stand. Handcuffs clicked into place. Miranda rights read in monotone. The procedural machinery of justice grinding into motion. Justice was supposed to feel like triumph. Instead, it felt like standing at a funeral where everyone forgot to bring flowers. They led Saskia and Corbin out of the bedroom, down the stairs, through the foyer where Celeste used to greet guests, out the front door into the strobing blue lights. I watched on the outdoor cameras as they were placed in separate patrol cars. The vehicles pulled away one by one until only Whitfield's unmarked sedan remained. He stood on the front porch for a long moment, looking at the house. Then he got in his car and drove away. The estate was empty again. I sat in the secret room for another hour, watching the monitors show nothing. Empty rooms, motionless cameras. The live stream had ended automatically when I shut it down. The internet would have the recording forever, but the live moment was over. Finally, I stood. My legs ached from sitting. My hands shook from adrenaline crash. I opened the bookshelf door and stepped into the study. The house was silent. No Chopin, no lavender scent, no smoke, just silence and the weight of what had happened here. My phone rang. Boyd. I answered. I saw the stream, he said without preamble. His voice was tight, worried. Recognized the bedroom. I called the police. I'm sorry, I didn't know if that's what you wanted. I walked down the stairs as we talked, through the foyer, toward the back of the house. You did the right thing, I said. I wasn't sure I could. Are you okay? I paused at the kitchen door, looked out at the lavender garden through the window. October sun hanging low, casting long shadows. Not yet, I said, but I will be. We talked for a few more minutes, about lawyers, about media, about what happens next. Then Boyd had to go, and I was alone again. I walked out to the garden, the stone steps where Celeste used to sit, where she'd read books and tended her plants and watched the sunset. I sat there now in her place and watched the light fade. The lavender rose stretched out on either side, still blooming, still maintained, though I couldn't imagine Saskia had done it recently. Maybe someone else. Maybe the plants were just that resilient. The October air smelled like earth and rain, and the faint trace of lavender. Not the concentrated oil I'd pumped through the ventilation. Just the natural scent of flowers at the end of their season. I stayed until dark, until the shadows swallowed the garden and the house and everything else. Then I stood, walked back to where I'd parked my car behind the east wing, and drove away. I didn't look back. The mansion wasn't mine, wasn't Celeste's, wasn't anyone's anymore. It was just a house where something terrible had happened, and something terrible had been exposed, and now it would sit empty while lawyers argued over what it all meant. 6 months passed in legal motions and media frenzy. The live stream had gone viral, 40 million views, endless think pieces, a nation debating vigilante justice versus legal process. Was Thane Garrison a hero who exposed his wife's killers, or a criminal who entrapped his own daughter through psychological torture? The legal system ground on. Grand jury, indictment, motions to suppress the live stream evidence, motions denied, more motions, more delays, defense lawyers arguing duress coercion, illegal surveillance, prosecutors arguing voluntary confession, public domain, inevitable discovery. And through it all I waited. Now 6 months later, in a downtown courtroom packed with cameras and strangers, the jury filed back in. I sat in the gallery's last row, invisible again. Just another face in the crowd of spectators who'd lined up at dawn for a seat. The foreman held a folded paper. The courtroom held its breath, 200 people frozen in that half second before everything changes forever. The foreman stood, unfolded the paper, cleared his throat. Judge Harold Brennan, 63 years old, presiding judge for the county, sat behind the bench with measured authority and no visible emotion. He'd presided over the entire 6-month trial without once betraying what he thought of live stream confessions, psychological warfare, or fathers who turned their homes into trap houses. Now he spoke. That has the jury reached a verdict, Bezits? We have, Your Honor. The paper passed from foreman to bailiff to judge. Brennan read it silently. His face didn't change. The defendants will rise. Saskia and Corbin stood. Their lawyers flanked them. Saskia had lost weight. Her hair was different, shorter, grayer. Corbin looked older than his 35 years. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, Judge Brennan read, "We, the jury, find the defendant Corbin Mercer guilty." Cameras flashed. Someone gasped. The judge continued without pause. Saskia Mercer guilty. My chest tightened. Boyd's hand landed on my shoulder, gripping hard. On the charge of document forgery, Corbin Mercer guilty. Saskia Mercer guilty. The live stream confession had been ruled admissible. The defense had argued duress coercion, illegal surveillance. But the prosecution countered that the confession was voluntary. No one forced them to blame each other. No one made them describe forging signatures and changing prescriptions. They'd done that themselves and panicked, believing they were alone. The jury had convicted based on their own words. My vigilante gambit had succeeded where legal process alone might have failed. Sentencing? Brennan continued, will be as follows: Corbin Mercer 15 years in state prison. Saskia Mercer 12 years. Boyd leaned close, whispered, "It's over. You can breathe now." I whispered back, "Can I?" Because it didn't feel over. It felt like standing at the edge of something vast and empty, looking down into a hole that used to be my life. Bailiffs moved forward, handcuffs. Saskia turned her head toward the gallery, eyes scanning the faces, looking for me. I stared straight ahead. Didn't meet her gaze, didn't acknowledge her, didn't give her the comfort of a father's final look. She was led away. Corbin followed. The courtroom erupted in noise, reporters shouting questions, spectators talking over each other, cameras clicking. I sat still. 1 week later, I drove to the county jail. The visiting room was exactly what you'd expect. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, plastic chairs bolted to the floor, thick glass partition with a phone on each side. Saskia was already sitting when they led me in. Orange jumpsuit, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked young and old at the same time. I sat across from her, picked up the phone. She picked up hers. We stared at each other. 5 minutes passed, maybe longer. Neither of us spoke. What words existed for this? What could I possibly say? I'm sorry you killed your mother. I forgive you for trying to steal everything. I still love you, despite what you've become. All lies, or all truths, I didn't know anymore. When do you stop being someone's father? The moment they betray you? Or the moment the judge reads the sentence aloud? I placed my right palm flat against the glass. An offering, a goodbye, something. Saskia stared at my hand. Her own hand twitched, rose halfway, then stopped. She didn't mirror the gesture. We stayed like that for another minute, my palm on the glass, hers in her lap. The phone receivers pressed to our ears in silence. Then I stood, hung up the phone, walked out. I didn't look back. 3 months passed. I stayed in a downtown apartment, small, temporary, furniture from a rental company, no pictures on the walls, no memories. Boyd called weekly about the estate, legal documents that needed signing, the charity foundation that needed finalizing, the mansion that sat empty waiting. I signed papers remotely, sent them back, avoided every invitation to visit the property. The mansion was supposed to disappear the day she was convicted. I told Boyd during one call. Instead, it waited patient as a gravestone. You have to come back eventually, Boyd said. For the final transfer, it requires your signature, in person, at the property. I know. When? Soon. But soon became, next week became, next month. April turned to May, May to June, June to July. 3 months felt like 3 years. Grief has its own physics bending time, until minutes stretch and months vanish. Finally, on a July morning, Boyd called again. The charity needs the transfer completed by August 1st, he said. Legal deadline. If we miss it, the whole thing falls apart. I'll be there tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., have the documents ready. I hung up before he could say anything else. The next morning, I got in my car, the same car I'd driven up Route 211 9 months ago when this all began, the sedan with the worn seats and the engine that made a clicking sound when it was cold. I drove the familiar route, past the diner where Ruth had helped me, past the library where I'd forged the contract, past the observation point where I'd watched Corbin and Saskia's alliance shatter, up the mountain road, through morning fog, past lavender farms and tourist overlooks, until I reached the estate entrance. The gates swung open automatically, recognizing my car from sensors I'd installed years ago. The driveway curved ahead, winding through rows of lavender that had grown wild and untended. No one had maintained them. No one had deadheaded the spent blooms or trimmed the sprawling stems. The purple flowers had spread beyond their beds, spilling over stone borders, reaching toward the driveway like they were trying to escape. I drove slowly, taking it in, the neglect, the persistence, the way nature reclaims everything if you let it. The mansion appeared around the final curve, gray stone, tall windows, the same as always, but different somehow, like a photograph of a place you used to know. I parked in front, and there standing on the front steps waiting with a folder of documents and something that looked almost like forgiveness was Boyd Hewitt. Boyd didn't speak as I walked toward him, just held the folder against his chest like a shield. The silence between us felt different now, not uncomfortable, just necessary. I climbed the steps, slowly feeling each one beneath my feet, as if the house itself was testing my resolve. "You've been busy," I said, nodding toward the windows. Fresh curtains hung where Celeste's old ones had rotted. The brass fixtures gleamed. He shrugged. Couldn't let it fall apart. Not before. He stopped himself. "Come inside." The foyer smelled of lemon polish instead of dust. The chandelier sparkled, but what stopped me cold was the wall of photographs Boyd had hung along the staircase. Celeste, at 20, her graduation. Celeste in our garden, hands deep in soil. Celeste laughing at something off camera, head thrown back truly alive. "I found them in storage," Boyd said quietly. "Though the women who come here should know whose house this was, whose love built it." My throat tightened. I touched the frame of the garden photo, remembering the moment I'd taken it. June morning. She'd been planting lavender. "Study this way." Boyd moved past me, giving me space. We walked through rooms transformed. The dining room now held mismatched tables and chairs, family style. The library's leather furniture was gone, replaced with soft couches and children's books. Everything expensive removed, everything cold made warm. In the study, Boyd spread the documents across Celeste's my desk. The charity transfer papers. Celeste's Haven incorporated 3 months ago, while I'd been hiding in that sterile apartment, unable to face these walls. "The last signature," Boyd said. "Then it's official." I read through the terms I'd already approved by email. The mansion and grounds transferred to the nonprofit. The $3 million from Celeste's trust funding operations for 5 years. My name nowhere on the board, just a clause stating the donor wished to remain anonymous. "She would have loved this," I said, signing my name. The pen felt heavy. "I know." Boyd signed as witness. "She talked about it, you know, before she got sick, wanting to help women who didn't have anyone." I looked up. "She never told me." "You were always at work." No judgment in his voice, just fact. "She told me lots of things." The words hit harder than any accusation. All those hours I'd spent building our fortune, Celeste had been dreaming of giving it away. And I'd never known. Never asked. "I'm sorry," I said. "That I wasn't that she had to—" "Don't." Boyd's hand landed on my shoulder. "You loved her the best way you knew how. That's not nothing." We stood there, 2 men who'd both loved the same woman in different ways, both carrying the weight of what we hadn't done. 2 weeks later, I stood at the mansion gates watching cars arrive. A minivan with a cracked windshield. A sedan held together by duct tape and prayer. Women emerged with children clinging to their hands, carrying garbage bags stuffed with belongings. Boyd had handled the opening day logistics. I'd only come because I couldn't not come. This was Celeste's dream, even if I'd learned about it too late. A woman with a fading bruise on her cheekbone carried a toddler up the steps. Another held a teenager's hand, both their faces carefully blank. The social worker guiding them pointed out the garden, the playground Boyd had built in the side yard, the rooms waiting upstairs. I stayed by the gates an observer, not part of this, just the man who'd signed the papers. "You're him, aren't you?" I turned. A girl stood beside me, maybe 7 years old, wearing a dress 2 sizes too big. Her mother was probably inside getting settled. She held something in her fist. "And I'm nobody," I said. She studied me with eyes too old for her face. Then she opened her hand. A single sprig of lavender lay across her palm, slightly crushed. I picked it from the garden. My mom said lavender means remembering people we love. My breath caught. I knelt down slowly eye level with her. "She's right," I managed. The girl placed the lavender in my hand, her small fingers careful, deliberate. She didn't smile. Didn't say anything else. Just turned and ran back toward the mansion, her too big dress flapping around her knees. I stayed kneeling there, the lavender stem between my fingers, watching her disappear through the front door, through Celeste's door, into Celeste's house that was no longer mine, but was more truly ours than it had ever been when we'd lived here. By sunset, the families were inside. Lights glowed in every window. I heard laughter, actual laughter floating from the kitchen. Boyd appeared on the front steps, waved me inside, but I shook my head. I walked to the garden instead, to the place where Celeste had planted her lavender. It had grown wild, sprawling across the borders. We'd laid purple blooms everywhere. I sat on the stone bench, still holding the girl's crushed sprig, and watched the sky turn orange, then pink, then deep purple like the flowers. And for the first time since I'd discovered that security footage, since I'd learned the truth, since I'd burned my life down to expose theirs, I felt something that might have been peace. The mansion behind me thrummed with new life. Tomorrow I'd drive back to the city, back to my empty apartment and my quiet existence. But tonight I sat in Celeste's garden, holding a child's gift, and let myself believe that maybe I'd done one thing right. The gate clicked shut behind me. I stood on the gravel shoulder of Route 211, my car 20 feet away, the July mountain air carrying a faint trace of lavender through the iron bars. Inside, beyond the long driveway, every window of the mansion held warm light, the kind of light that means people are moving through rooms, making meals, learning which stairs creak. 9 months. That was all it had taken to unravel 30 years of marriage inheritance and the particular blindness of a man who trusted cameras more than conversations. I had arrived here in October, fog with a financial advisor's number in my pocket and no real plan. I had found the lavender garden alive and the refrigerator stocked. I had discovered frame by frame in a hidden surveillance room that the woman my daughter performed grief for had never been mourned, only waited out. I had crouched in a forest behind my own house, ankle-fractured rain soaking through my jacket, watching flashlight beams sweep the trees. I had sat in a motel room, photographing a forged signature next to a discontinued prescription for digoxin and a silver bracelet engraved with a single letter. I had done all of it. And then 35,000 strangers had watched my daughter and her husband unravel in a smoke-filled bedroom, blaming each other in the dark for what they had done to Celeste. A second-floor curtain shifted. A child's silhouette appeared at the glass, small still looking out at the valley, without any apparent fear of what lay beyond it. Celeste had stood at that window the same way. I never asked what she was watching for. I walked to the car, set the lavender sprig the girl had given me on the passenger seat, started the engine. The road down the mountain was dark and familiar. The diner's neon sign passed on my left. I kept driving. There was nothing left to collect. The estate was signed away. The foundation was funded. The case number 2025D009341 existed now, only in archives no one would read twice. Behind me, at 1847 Blue Ridge Mountain Road, one small child stood at the glass with her whole life ahead of her. That was enough. And to you listening to my story, remember this family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound. I spent 30 years building security systems to protect buildings and assets. I locked every door, monitored every camera, safeguarded every dollar, but I failed to protect what mattered most, Celeste herself. I was so busy creating our empire that I missed the signs my own daughter was planning murder. Don't make my mistake. Watch the people closest to you, not just your possessions. This family story taught me that betrayal doesn't announce itself. It wears a familiar face. It uses the trust you've built over decades as a weapon. When I discovered what Saskia had done, I had two choices. Let the justice system handle it, or make sure the world knew the truth. I chose exposure because family betrayal thrives in silence. Looking back, I believe God's timing brought me home exactly when I needed to find the truth and gave me the strength to see justice through. If this family story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you handle it? Please share this family story with anyone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already subscribed to Revenge Dad for more stories about Justice family betrayal and finding peace. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means everything to me. One final note, while this story contains fictionalized elements for dramatic impact, the core message about protecting what truly matters remains real. God bless you all.